Welcome to our deep dive into the life and tragic death of singer Liam Payne. You've given us a lot to work with, articles, transcripts, even excerpts from Maya Henry's novel. Wow, there's a lot to unpack here.
It's true. Liam Payne's story is so much more than just headlines. We're going to trace these threads, connect the dots between his childhood, those intense pressures of One Direction, and his struggles later with addiction and mental health.
Okay, let's unpack this. You think pop star's life, you might picture the glamour, the screaming fans, but these sources paint a much different picture of Liam Payne's early life.
Yeah, right from the start. Hardships.
Yeah.
Growing up working class in Wolverhampton, chronic kidney issues as a child. Imagine dealing with that so young, and then on top of that, bullied relentlessly.
It's heartbreaking to read about those experiences with bullying. He even said in one interview that he had to, quote, sort it out himself because the adults in his life weren't doing enough. I mean, that speaks volumes about his resilience, but also suggests he was forced to cope with difficult situations on his own from a very young age.
Yeah. And that pattern, having to cope alone, seems to repeat itself. Throughout his life, even his first taste of fame, X Factor at just 14, exposed him to more public ridicule.
It's almost like fame amplified those early challenges. He doesn't make it on X Factor, right? And then he's labeled an X Factor reject at 16.
Yeah.
That kind of public scrutiny can be brutal for anyone, let alone a teenager.
Right. And this is where the whirlwind starts to pick up speed. 2 years later, he returns to X Factor, joins One Direction, and boom, global stardom.
Like being strapped to a rocket.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's where it gets interesting, though. Behind the sold-out stadiums, screaming fans, Payne was experiencing intense loneliness and isolation. He talked about feeling trapped, like he couldn't escape the pressures of fame. He even said it almost, quote, killed him a couple of times.
Those aren't just throwaway lines, those are cries for help. He was clearly grappling with the dark side of fame, the side we don't see in magazines and music videos.
Right. It's easy to understand why he felt that way. The constant touring, the lack of privacy, the pressure to maintain this perfect image 24/7. It's no wonder he felt like he couldn't, quote, press the stop button, as he described it.
Yeah, he was searching for ways to cope. And unfortunately, that led him down a dangerous path. He started relying on alcohol to numb the pain, the anxiety, the constant pressure. As we know, that can quickly spiral out of control.
Right. It's like he was trapped in this cycle of intense highs and crushing lows, no real way to escape.
And then, right in the middle of all of this, he starts this high-profile relationship with Cheryl Cole, who was 10 years older than him. Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah, you can see a pattern here, can't you? I mean, after the intense scrutiny of One Direction, it's understandable that Payne might crave some stability, some normalcy. But his relationship with Cheryl, like you said, brought a whole different set of complications. It was tabloid, gold secret rendezvous, surprise baby announcement, all playing out under the glare of the public eye.
Exactly. And let's not forget, he became a father at 23. That's a huge life change, even without the added pressure of fame. And he admitted to struggling with fatherhood early on, feeling overwhelmed, worried he wouldn't be enough for his son, Bear, and Cheryl.
It seems like he was constantly juggling these massive life events, all while trying to navigate the pressures of his solo career. It's a lot for anyone to handle, let alone someone who's already struggling with anxiety and potentially addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And while he and Cheryl eventually split amicably, focusing on co-parenting their son, it's another example of the constant change, the upheaval in his life. It's like he was searching for solid ground, but kept finding himself on shifting sand.
So we have this backdrop of early hardship. Then this incredibly intense experience with fame, a high-profile relationship, all before he even turned 30. It's almost like he lived a lifetime in a decade.
And that's just the beginning. His relationship with Maya Henry, his struggles with agoraphobia, the shocking allegations in Henry's novel. There's so much more to uncover.
Yeah. This is where it gets really heavy. Let's dive into that next.
You know, before we get to Maya Henry, let's maybe step back for a minute and look at the music industry itself and how that pressure cooker might have impacted his mental health.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's easy to forget. Behind the catchy tunes and the stage presence, there's a whole machinery at work, right? Pushing for the next hit, the next album, the next tour.
Yeah. And for someone like Payne, phenomenal success, so young with One Direction, going solo must have been a whole other beast.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine that pressure. Trying to establish yourself as an individual artist, but still carrying that weight of those One Direction expectations. It's like everyone's waiting to see if you can make it on your own. And that scrutiny can be suffocating.
Yeah.
Right.
We see glimpses of this in the sources. There's an interview where he talks about his frustration with the creative process. Like, feeling like he wasn't being taken seriously as a musician, his ideas were dismissed.
Right. He wanted to break free from that boy band mold, explore different sounds, write more mature lyrics, but it seems like the industry was pushing him toward a pre-packaged pop formula.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that just days before his death, reports emerged that his label, Universal Music, had dropped him, citing disappointing sales and his increasingly negative public image as reasons. Paints a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah. And there were even comments online suggesting that his music wasn't resonating with fans, that he hadn't found his own sound yet. I mean, it makes you wonder, did he feel like a failure? Especially after achieving, such massive success with One Direction.
Yeah, it's a classic double-edged sword, isn't it? Social media can connect artists with their fans, but it also opens them up to this relentless barrage of criticism and negativity.
Oh, for sure. And remember those early experiences with bullying he described? It's like that same dynamic was playing out, but on a global scale. Only this time, it's amplified by social media's echo chamber.
You're drawing a powerful parallel there. It's as if the ridicule he faced as a child for that X Factor audition was now being mirrored in the online comments about his solo career,
Yeah.
only magnified 1,000-fold.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder that he retreated further into himself, struggling with anxiety and agoraphobia. Speaking of which, let's unpack that a bit more. You mentioned earlier that Payne had been diagnosed with agoraphobia, which is a type of anxiety disorder.
Yeah, agoraphobia is often misunderstood. It's not just a fear of open spaces, as some people might think. It's a more complex fear of situations where escape might be difficult or help unavailable, often leading to avoidance behaviors.
So for someone like Payne, who is constantly in the public eye, even simple things like going to the grocery store or attending a social gathering could have been incredibly challenging.
Exactly. Imagine feeling trapped by your own anxiety, unable to live a normal life because of the overwhelming fear and panic.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that he was also dealing with addiction, which often goes hand in hand with mental health disorders. It's like this vicious cycle, each problem exacerbating the other.
Absolutely. And while he did speak openly about his struggles with both anxiety and addiction, which is commendable, it makes you wonder if he was receiving adequate support. Was there a network of professionals, therapists, support groups helping him navigate these incredibly challenging issues?
That's a crucial question. And unfortunately, we might never know the full extent of the support he was receiving. But his willingness to talk about his mental health, to break down those stigmas, especially for men, is a powerful part of his legacy.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even those who seem to have it all can be struggling silently. And it underscores the importance of seeking help, of having a support system in place, and of creating a culture where vulnerability is seen as a strength, not a weakness.
So we have this complex interplay of industry pressure, online scrutiny, personal struggles with anxiety and addiction, and then into this already volatile mix enters Maya Henry.
Ah, yes, the Maya Henry chapter. This is where the story takes an even darker turn, don't you think?
Definitely. Their relationship was a roller coaster from the start.
Yeah.
Public declarations of love, whirlwind engagement, followed by breakups, makeups, all played out across social media. And then, of course, there's the novel.
Looking forward,
Yeah.
a seemingly innocuous title. Yet beneath the surface, it's a scathing portrayal of a relationship seemingly inspired by their time together.
Yeah, even though Henry claimed it was a work of fiction, it's hard not to see the parallels between the characters and her real-life relationship with Payne.
It's like reading a blind item in a gossip magazine, except it's a whole novel. And some of the details are pretty shocking, especially the allegation that he pressured her into an abortion.
That's a serious accusation. And it definitely fueled the negative press surrounding Payne at the time. It's important to acknowledge that we only have Henry's side of the story, but the impact of her words was undeniable.
Yeah. The book and the subsequent TikTok video where Henry accused Payne of preying on fans painted a very damaging picture of him in the court of public opinion.
And this all happened just days before his death. Adding another layer of complexity to an already tragic story, it's impossible to know for sure what impact this negative publicity had on his mental state in those final days, but it's certainly a factor we can't ignore.
It's as if all these different threads, the industry pressure, the online hate, the relationship drama, his own personal demons, were converging into a perfect storm.
And tragically, that storm culminated in his death in Buenos Aires, under circumstances that remain shrouded in mystery.
This is where we delve into the heart of the tragedy, where the story takes its most devastating turn.
Let's unpack that next. This is the part that still leaves me with so many questions. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. And I have to say, even with all this material, Liam Payne's death still feels so surreal.
It's understandable. His story is so full of contradictions, immense talent, deep insecurity, a yearning for connection, yet often finding himself isolated. And then there's that tragic irony, someone who spoke so openly about his struggles ultimately succumbing to them.
It's almost like there were two Liam Paynes, the one we saw on stage, the charismatic pop star, that dazzling smile, and the one behind the curtain battling these demons we could only glimpse through his interviews, his lyrics.
Yeah, and I think his death in Buenos Aires just amplifies that duality. On the one hand, the official report, the fall from the balcony, the toxicology results, a mix of cocaine, benzodiazepine, and that pink cocaine, which, as I understand it, is this potent, dangerous cocktail of substances.
Right, and there were reports of erratic behavior leading up to his death. Witnesses described him as agitated, even paranoid, and the autopsy revealed 25 separate injuries, suggesting a struggle, or perhaps a desperate attempt to regain control.
Right. But then there's the other side, the unanswered questions. Speculation swirling around his final moments. Was it a tragic accident fueled by substance abuse? A moment of recklessness gone wrong? Or was there something more intentional, a cry for help that went unheard?
It's hard not to wonder,
Hmm.
especially knowing the immense pressure he was under. In those final days, the legal troubles with Maya Henry, the reported label drop, that constant online scrutiny, it's like everything was closing in on him.
Yeah, and that's what makes his story so heartbreaking. You have this young man, achieved global fame, had millions of fans adoring him, yet behind that facade of success, he was struggling with this darkness. That ultimately consumed him.
So where do we go from here? What can we take away from Liam Payne's life and death?
Well, I think his story, it serves as the stark reminder of the human cost of fame, the pressures, the scrutiny, the relentless demand for perfection. It's a lot for anyone to handle,
Sure.
especially someone who's already vulnerable.
And it highlights the importance of mental health awareness,
Yeah.
not just in the music industry, but in every aspect of our lives.
Mm.
We need to create a culture where people feel comfortable seeking help, where vulnerability is seen as a strength, not a weakness.
Yeah. We need to be more aware of the signs of someone struggling, to offer support without judgment, to listen with empathy and understanding.
Yeah. Because ultimately, Liam Payne's legacy is a call for compassion. It's a reminder that behind the headlines, the social media posts, there are real people with real emotions, facing real challenges.
And that everyone, regardless of their fame or fortune, deserves kindness and support.
It's a powerful message, and one I hope we can all carry with us. Liam Payne's story is a tragedy, but perhaps his legacy can be one of hope and healing. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a heavy but important conversation.
It certainly has. Let's hope his story inspires us all to be a little kinder, a little more understanding, and a little more supportive of those around us.